I wish to talk about an unknown genre in video games. There are several examples which fit this genre, plus nearest neighbors and false friends, but there is no codified recognition or description of what this unknown genre is. I will describe 5 examples which are the gold standard, explore one false friend, then list various titles in descending order of connection, and finally a conclusion. To appreciate games, we should be able to define what a game is. I find this unknown genre troubling because it is so difficult to articulate the very narrow qualia it generates, thus making it difficult to find similar such games. But first, let me relate an example of why it is so important to know the correct nomenclature when discussing games. Several of my favorite all-time games include the Stalker Trilogy, Shadow of Chernobyl, Clear Sky, Call of Pripyat, Vampire the Masquerade, Bloodlines, the original Deus Ex on PC, System Shock 1, Jurassic Park, Trespasser, System Shock 2, Pathologic, Prey from 2017, Divine Cybermancy, which is a fantastic overlooked gem, and finally, Brigand Oaxaca, which is my favorite game of the last decade. So, when a gaming enthusiast or a beautiful woman would ask what kind of games I was into, naturally I always said first-person shooters, since they are all first-person and contain shooting, to which the enthusiast would bellow excitedly, "Yeah, so you're in a Halo!" To which I would reply, "No, in fact, I hate the Halo series, given it is the diametric opposite to every game just listed. There is no inventory, no versatility of action, no emergent solutions. It is mindless blasting with enemies that charge into danger." The enthusiast would then respond, "Dude, so you're in a Call of Duty?" Sadly, no. Again, I hate that series and regard it as a shallow and insufferable grind. This scenario would always repeat itself, my frustration growing that nobody was ever even aware of the FPS games which I played, until one day a wizened gaming veteran pointed out something. My favorite genre is not the first-person shooter, it is the immersive simulator, or IMSIM as fans call it. All of the above games are, in fact, IMSIMs. This was a revelation. Suddenly, knowing the correct nomenclature, the precise and exact classification, allowed me to find a world of similar games enjoyed by fellow enthusiasts. Entire forums dedicated to this specific genre, the IMSIM. From there I was able to discover and enjoy similar games. Knowing the terminology gave me power. And so it is with this unknown genre. The games we will explore tend to be lumped in with others, but I argue they deserve their own distinct classification. I'm going to introduce the Golden 5. These are 5 examples which I feel clearly define what I'm searching for. If at any point my subjective observations become muddled, the important thing is always to return to these Golden 5. Their defining characteristics will show us the way. Jagur 5 Golden Triangle for the MSX1 from 1987. Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake for the MSX2 from 1990. Die Hard for the NES from 1991. Alien 3 on the Game Boy from 1992, and Resident Evil Gaiden for the Game Boy Color from 2001. To describe some of the overlapping components of the unknown genre, here are some key phrases I jotted down. Two-dimensional, top-down not isometric, open world, free roaming, exploration, in-game persistence, modern or future setting, gun combat but not as the focus, emergent situations, slower paced, intellectual, not constant action, large inventory, dialogue, cinematic cutscenes, adventure-style puzzles, multi-use, multi-function items, resource management, survival. Let us explore each game briefly. Jagur 5. This is often incorrectly labeled as an RPG, which is the entire problem I'm trying to address with this video. You assemble your team, deal with the locals in the villages and temples, buy weapons and ammo and food and medicine. You collect special items and freely explore a large map. There are ancient statues to move back into place, poppy fields which need burning. You even take a woman on a tranquil date at one point. It features true open-world gameplay as you pick the tasks you want to accomplish in the order you choose. It's akin to Stalker, but it's from 1987. Even though it features respawning enemies and heavy combat at times, this is interspersed amidst slower and contemplative moments requiring thought. Metal Gear 2, an enormous map which slowly opens up, gated progress through item acquisition, limited resources, weapons and items that serve different functions depending on context. For example, there are 3 types of ration, all of which can be used to restore health. However, one type is also used to capture a messenger pigeon. Another type of ration is needed to neutralize acid. You're placed in a persistent and reactive open world, accumulating a set of diverse tools to solve multiple problems. This isn't just a stealth game. It's like Zelda with guns or an overhead Super Metroid. It's also so much more than all that. Die Hard. Often mislabeled as an overhead shooter, you micromanage a diverse collection of multifunctional items and weapons while juggling both body health and foot health. There are locked rooms where you can blow the doors with C4 if you find them, or sacrifice your machine gun to enter an air vent and get inside that way. But this leaves you with only a pistol until you get a new machine gun. This produces a delicious risk-reward scenario where you are free to sacrifice resources for quicker progress. There is a finite quantity of enemies in the building, their number ticking down as you kill them. There is also a finite quantity of resources to scavenge. Thus it becomes a guerrilla war, constantly evolving based on your actions. Hans will periodically radio the enemies to head to the floor you're on. The game itself almost feels alive, tracking your movements. Are you hunting them, or are they hunting you? Alien 3. This is basically Metal Gear 2 with aliens, or Zelda with guns and aliens. It attempts to simulate a living, reactive ecosystem. There is a finite number of aliens, eggs, and prisoners. The aliens respawn until the eggs are destroyed. Eliminate the eggs and you can hunt the aliens. If every prisoner is killed, you no longer see them roaming the halls. Ammo and health resources are finite. Progress is gate-kept through item acquisition. There are multiple special items, but their uses are not obvious. The entire prison map is enormous and yours to explore. Resident Evil Gaiden. This often gets just lumped in with other survival horrors and is heavily criticized. But I loved it so much, I interviewed the development team for a feature in Retro Gamer magazine. It has an expansive map which you gradually explore, a variety of weapons, each with their own characteristics, optimal uses, and unique ammo. Key items are needed to progress, and there's a feeling of in-game persistence, as collected ammo and defeated enemies do not respawn except in special circumstances. Like the other games in the Golden Five, Resi Gaiden presents you with a large, coherent, functioning world and a set of tools to facilitate problem solving. Cognitively, you need to keep track of multiple overlapping systems to win. These Golden Five and other examples are normally lumped together with run-and-guns, arena shooters, RPGs, or under the vague descriptor of action-adventures. But all of these names lack precision and dismiss several unique aspects of our unknown genre. So, what should we call them instead? In many ways, their functionality is close to a Metroid game, so perhaps Overhead Metroid? Zelda with guns? 2D ImSims? Maybe Jagur-like, based on Jagur 5 and how the genre classification of roguelike was coined from the game Rogue? I don't know, but I need people to understand that this is a real and logical delineation of several very special games, which I must have more of. Before we go through a long list, let's examine Zombies Ate My Neighbors, The False Friend. Now, I adore this game. I finished it multiple times and even interviewed its creator, Mike Ebert, writing a feature for Hardcore Gaming 101 and Retro Gamer magazine. I probably love it because it contains so many elements of the unknown genre, and yet I would absolutely not classify it as the unknown genre. It features a diverse inventory of items which have multiple uses. For example, a fire extinguisher can freeze enemies or douse the flames in a fireplace, leading to a secret area. A bazooka can kill enemies or destroy locked doors or blow holes in hedge mazes. The death of a neighbor persists until the game's end, acting as a finite resource. There are multiple factors that would make you think it's a prime contender, but let's discuss its qualia. Dr. V.S. Ramachandran defines it thus. Qualia simply means the raw feel of sensations, such as the subjective quality of pain, seeing the color red, or eating gnocchi with truffles. It is subjective sensation, and it is researched so as to understand the biological origin of consciousness. That is, the Golden Five produce a very specific sensation in my mind, which Zombies Ate My Neighbors does not. Its sensation is very different. Enemies endlessly respawn. There is a constant urgency to keep moving. There is no overworld or large map, only short contained levels. Your only goal is finding the last neighbor which spawns an exit, meaning all of its strategy and mechanics function solely on a micro level. You deal just with what's in front of you. There is no macro scale, as with the Golden Five, where your mind continues to juggle the goals and roadblocks which are out of sight. For example, in Alien 3, while you might be dealing with shooting a large alien approaching you, you're simultaneously thinking about the optimal route through the upcoming ventilation maze and what could await you now that you have a blowtorch to open a previously sealed door, all while pondering the decreasing number of inmates across the entire map and asking yourself, do you remember where all the eggs are, since they need destroying? Also, what are all those items like the knife actually used for? Wait a minute. What the hell? That's not right. When playing the unknown genre, a lot of time will be spent looking at the inventory or the maps, not playing the game directly, but playing it conceptually as you conceive of solutions to problems using your available tools. The unknown genre is, in fact, played partially inside your mind. Zombies Ate My Neighbors focuses on reflexes. All that matters is finding that final neighbor and exiting. There is no slow orchestration of any larger goal beyond this. To understand the unknown genre, we need to go into the details, and hopefully this painstaking categorization and delineation between different game titles will help build an image inside your mind. At the very least, if you play each of the Golden Five and you feel a certain indescribable similarity gnawing at your mind, that's the unknown genre. Let's run through a series of examples very quickly. Each section will be in alphabetical order. We'll look at prime examples that match the Golden Five closely, then games which come very close but are not a perfect match, and then examples which absolutely do not fit the description, yet are often mentioned anyway. Prime examples: D- on the MSX2. It's basically Metal Gear 2 with aliens, or Zelda with guns and aliens, or Alien 3 on the Game Boy. Infiltrator on the Intellivision. It's Metal Gear 2. The entire Metal Gear series, in fact, across multiple different formats, including Snake's Revenge on the NES and Ghost Babel on the Game Boy Color. Now I realize these two examples have distinct separate stages which you can't revisit, but until we can all agree or codify this particular genre, I'm going to include them in the list anyway. Rambo on the PC-88 and Rambo Special on the MSX2, it's basically Metal Gear again. Star Trek the 25th Anniversary for the NES. This fits a lot of the criteria. Now, granted, there are distinct sections which you visit and you don't really need to revisit again, so it's not quite the open world map of the Golden Five, but there are also planets you can visit which serve absolutely no purpose to your overall goal. There is a feeling of free-form exploration. Star Trek: The Next Generation on the SNES and the Mega Drive. This is an even better example, since you're free to revisit planets as you see fit, go back to old ones, go to planets which maybe you shouldn't even be visiting that early in the game. There's a lot of freeform exploration, and it matches all of the other criteria. War of the Dead 2 on the MSX2. This is a great example because it's basically Metal Gear 2, except in a city with hideous mutated creatures. Now for some similar or fringe examples, games which come close but which don't quite match the required criteria. Indiana Jones on the Game Boy Color. It matches most of the criteria, let down only by the fact that it has distinct stages which you can't revisit again. However, the multi-use items are fantastic and integrated so well into the game world. James Bond 007 on the Game Boy. This again matches all of the criteria except it has distinct stages which you don't get to revisit. Jurassic Park on the SNES. This matches all of the criteria, including a large overworld map. However, I feel that the first-person shooting levels detract away. This is right on the line. This could be part of the prime example. I mean, after all, Gaiden has the first-person battles, but they're not quite as intrusive as the first-person buildings in Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park on the Amiga is a completely different kind of game. It looks similar to the SNES game. Again, the first-person sections sort of detract from it. Mission Impossible on the NES matches most of the criteria except it has distinct or separate stages. Shadowrun on the Mega Drive. This matches all of the criteria, including a large overworld map. However, it's very much an RPG. It fits nicely into the RPG bracket with a heavy focus on statistics and experience. Unmetal on the PC. It matches a lot of the criteria, but the mechanics are very simple, and again it has separate or distinct stages. Now for some examples which absolutely do not count, though they often get brought up when I ask about the unknown genre. Chaos Engine on the Amiga. This is an arena shooter. It doesn't really match the unknown genre at all. Crusader No Remorse on the PC. Pretty good, very close. However, I feel that the isometric perspective gives it a very different feel. It makes the platforming quite challenging. It changes the sensation of the gun combat. So it's a great game, comes very close, but I'm specifically looking for a top-down view which is not isometric. Dark Arms on the Neo Geo Pocket Color. There's a lot of respawning enemies. It's a very simplistic game system. There's not really a sense of persistence in the world. I definitely wouldn't put that on the list. Degeneration on the Amiga. Great game, matches a lot of points. However, each of the floors is a separate level unto itself and it's isometric. Fortified Zone on the Game Boy. It looks a little bit like Metal Gear, but really this is an arena shooter. Heavy Barrel, an overhead shooter or a overhead run and gun. This gets brought up a lot, but it does not match the unknown genre. Jurassic Park on the NES. This is a false friend. It's got separate stages and the mechanics are very, very simple, very basic. It doesn't have the complexity, especially with regards to the inventory, that would be required to fit the genre. Masho no Yakata Gabalin on the MSX. I am so desperate to find more games that might fit this list that I was even considering this at one point. It's a lot of fun, but it doesn't quite match what we're looking for. Operation Logic Bomb on the SNES. This looks like a Metal Gear game, but actually it's a very simple, rudimentary, overhead, run and gun, sometimes arena-style shooter. Definitely doesn't go on the list. Shadowrun on the SNES. Love it, one of my favorite games, but it fits very nicely into the RPG genre, and it's got an isometric perspective. Zero Sievert on the PC. For a while, I was really considering adding this to the main list. However, the roguelike nature of the overworld map, which randomizes things, I feel like to fit the unknown genre, you need to have things fixed in specific places on the overworld map, and the roguelike aspect of this distances it for me. And finally, Zelda: A Link to the Past, which actually fits all of the criteria perfectly, other than the fact that it's got a medieval fantasy setting and that its combat, instead of projectile combat over long distances, is close-range melee combat with a blade, which fundamentally changes the sensation of the gameplay. But otherwise, most of the games on the Golden 5 actually look a lot like Zelda: A Link to the Past, albeit with a modern setting and gun combat. The other thing is, if we regard Zelda: A Link to the Past as being part of the main list, then that opens up the floodgates for a whole range of action RPGs such as Crystallis, Secret of Mana, Alundra, and I want to avoid that. Nobody needs to make a video explaining what Link to the Past is because everyone intuitively understands what it is. So, when you ask for recommendations, you receive hundreds. It represents an often copied template. But if I ask for more games like Jagur 5 or Die Hard, I'm probably going to get a bunch of dumb overhead shooters suggested. Which is why I needed to make this video to add some sort of clarity to the discussion. Games which fall under the unknown genre stimulate your cognitive abilities. In that way, they are similar to action RPGs, but without the heavy numbers. They have complex inventories, limited resources, slow contemplative moments where you reflect on your situation, projectile combat which only supplements the core gameplay, a world with a degree of persistence where actions produce lasting effects. As mentioned at the start, we might call this unknown genre Overhead Metroid, Zelda with Guns, 2D ImSims, or Jagur-likes, or perhaps something else. But I am so tired of trying to explain what I seek and not being understood. Even worse, the dearth of such games makes me think the unknown genre might simply die out, absorbed into adjacent genres which are better known, but do not produce that same cognitive sensation, that same qualia. Or perhaps I'm imagining it all, and none of the above actually exists. If you have any idea what I'm talking about, or can think of any similar examples, please post in the comments. This channel is not monetized, nor do I have a Patreon. So if you'd like to support me and encourage more videos such as this to be made, please consider buying one of my books from the Untold History of Game Developers series. While I will receive money from each sale, you will also receive a really nice book. So in a way, it's more like you're actually just treating yourself, and I think you deserve it.